They deserve it more than you. My father's voice echoed through the ballroom as champagne glasses froze midair. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me while he stood beside my sister and her groom, smiling like he had just announced something noble instead of stealing from his own daughter. The penthouse, he continued proudly, lifting his glass. Isabella's penthouse. I'm giving it to the newlyweds. Laughter and applause erupted. My hands went numb. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my heels. I had bought that penthouse with 10 years of 14-hour workdays, endless audits, and nights sleeping under my office desk at an investment firm in Manhattan. No trust fund. No inheritance. Every square foot belonged to me. And my father had just given it away. I met his eyes across the room. He didn't look guilty. He looked relieved, like he had finally said out loud what he'd believed all along. You owe us. The music resumed. Guests clinked glasses. My sister Vanessa gasped dramatically and hugged him. Daddy, that's too much, she said, already crying. My chest burned. I walked out of the ballroom without saying a word. They had never loved me for who I was, only for what I could provide. Since graduating from Wharton, I'd been the family's emergency fund, tuition payer, and mortgage rescuer. Every month, I wired money to my parents and sister. Every holiday, I arrived with expensive gifts. And still they called me cold, arrogant, the outsider. Because I refused to be small. The morning after the wedding, I sat in my penthouse overlooking Central Park, my phone filled with messages. Your sister needs the keys. Stop being selfish. You embarrassed us. I called my advisor, Mark Feldman, the only person who had ever warned me. They're using you, he said calmly after hearing everything. And now they've crossed a legal line. He asked for copies of the bank transfers, property records, and contracts I'd signed on my father's behalf. I sent everything. 3 days later, Mark called me back. Isabella, your father has been misrepresenting himself to investors. They believe he owns your assets. He doesn't. But he's been using them as collateral. My breath caught. He built his entire business on the illusion that your wealth is his. A chill ran through me. My father wasn't just manipulative, he was committing fraud. Mark set a meeting with the firm's board and major investors. I attended quietly, sitting at the far end of the glass table while my father presented projections. Then Mark stood. Before we continue, he said, you should know the assets referenced in these reports do not belong to Mr. Romano. Silence. He handed out documents. My name glared from the headers. My father's face drained of color. The penthouse, Mark continued, is legally owned by Isabella. She has also been the sole source of several capital injections into this company. The investors murmured. Which means, Mark finished, you've been misrepresenting ownership. This constitutes fraud. My father stared at me, his eyes pleading. I didn't speak. By the end of the meeting, the investors withdrew. Within hours, his company collapsed. That night, he showed up at my door. You've destroyed me, he whispered. No, I said. You destroyed yourself. He left without another word. But the storm wasn't over. The next morning, my sister arrived, furious, desperate. You ruined my life, she screamed. Where are we supposed to live? I closed the door in her face. And as I leaned against it, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. You think this is over? You don't know what we're capable of. My heart pounded. Because for the first time I realized my family wasn't just toxic. They were dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. The message replayed in my mind like a ticking clock. You think this is over? You don't know what we're capable of. For years, I'd believed my family's worst weapon was guilt. I was wrong. Desperation had sharpened them into something far more dangerous. By morning, Mark was already on the phone. You need to take this seriously, he warned. Your father's finances are collapsing. People like him don't go quietly. I changed the locks, installed security cameras, and stayed away from predictable routines. Still, every sound outside my penthouse made my heart race. 3 days later, my father was arrested. The charges were public: financial misrepresentation, wire fraud, falsified collateral documents. His name flooded business news sites. The man who once ruled our family now stood in handcuffs outside a federal building. But he didn't face this alone. Vanessa showed up at my office unannounced, eyes hollow, makeup streaked. "You have to fix this," she said, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "They're investigating me too." "Because you signed documents you didn't read," I replied. "That's not my responsibility." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Dad says if you don't help, he'll expose you. He kept copies of everything." My blood ran cold. "Copies of what?" She swallowed. "Your bank records. The transfers. He says he'll make it look like you were part of it." Mark acted immediately. The FBI subpoenaed my father's storage units and digital files. When they found nothing linking me to the fraud, only proof of my victimization, the threat collapsed. My father was denied bail. The trial came swiftly. In court, he looked smaller than I remembered, his once perfect suit hanging loose on his frame. When I took the stand, his eyes filled with tears. "Isabella," he said softly, "you wouldn't be here without me." The courtroom was silent. "I wouldn't be here without my own work," I replied. "You only taught me what betrayal looks like." The verdict was decisive. Guilty. He was sentenced to 12 years. Vanessa filed for divorce soon after. Her husband, stripped of the promised penthouse, disappeared with his family's money. She moved into a small apartment across the city and never contacted me again. And I finally felt free. I sold the penthouse, not because I had to, but because I wanted to release the past. I moved to Boston and accepted a leadership role at a global finance firm that valued integrity over power. For the first time, I built something that belonged only to me. One evening, I received a letter from prison. "You were always stronger than I was," my father wrote. "I was afraid of you, so I tried to own you." I folded the letter and placed it in a box I no longer opened. Because I didn't need closure. I had my life back. And this time, no one could take it from me.